The core of the US-China conflict lies in the clash between manufacturing and finance, the real economy versus the virtual economy. Everything else is just a side issue. Previously, the global economic order worked like this. Step 1. China sold its cheap goods to the US. Step 2. China used the dollars earned from selling those cheap goods to buy US Treasury bonds, sending the dollars back to the US. Step 3. Wall Street in the US took the dollars from China's investments and reinvested them in China, sharing the profits from China's economic growth. In this rules-based world order set by the US, China was positioned as the producer of industrial products. Meanwhile, countries in South America, the Middle East, and Russia were defined as raw material exporters, and the US sat at the top of the pyramid. By simply printing money, the US could enjoy cheap industrial goods and capitalize on the economic growth of other countries. Because of this, the US was very favorable toward China at the time, even proposing the concept of G2, which means a two-country group or US-China co-governance. However, the essence of this US-led global economic order was that China was both exporting goods and capital to the US. On the surface, China earned money by selling goods to the US, but was this money enough to compensate for the ecological and environmental costs at home? Moreover, a significant portion of the dollars earned was used to buy US debt, meaning the money ended up right back in the US. It's like cutting both ends off a carrot. America isolated its capitalists from its workers. The heavily polluting factories were relocated abroad, leaving only high-tech and service industries in the US domestically, where people could enjoy high living standards and welfare benefits. It all seemed perfect, but the expansion of financial capital tends to squeeze out industrial capital. We used to hear things like starting businesses or investing in real estate as ways to get rich, and that even the profits of listed companies couldn't match the money made from buying an apartment in a major city in China. That's exactly the point. The same phenomenon has long existed in the US, where people realized it was easier to hand their money to Wall Street investors than to work hard running a factory. The US faced deindustrialization precisely because of this. Industrial capital abandoned manufacturing and shifted into finance. Therefore, the decline of American manufacturing was inevitable. But here's the problem: Wall Street can only provide so many jobs, maybe for tens of thousands of people. What happens to manufacturing workers after industries move away? They lose their jobs, and the benefits all go to financial capital, while workers are left with nothing but unemployment. So, it wasn't Wall Street pushing for deglobalization. Wall Street loves a unified global market because it allows them to expand and profit everywhere. The ones wanting deglobalization were the workers in the Rust Belt. Under nationalist and patriotic slogans, they rallied and elected someone like Trump. It doesn't really matter whether a real estate mogul like him could represent workers' interests. What mattered was stirring things up and disrupting the order that was bleeding manufacturing workers dry. On China's side, rapid industrialization driven by foreign investment and external orders made it the world's factory, but not without a price. Industrialization inevitably leads to urbanization, and that's when capital starts to dominate. When capital takes over, a rent economy forms. What is a rent economy? It means that whether you open a restaurant, a barber shop, or a small supermarket, after working hard all year, you realize that most of your efforts have gone to paying rent, and your profits mostly end up with your landlord. That's a rent economy. This significantly raises production costs for companies. Labor costs are fixed expenses for businesses every year, and even if businesses increase wages, workers' disposable income doesn't actually grow. So where does the money go? Right, to rent. The rent economy erodes China's low-cost advantage in exports, making cost-cutting strategies a thing of the past. This is why China must upgrade its industries. Only by leveraging technological advantages to gain pricing power can China earn high premiums in the international market. But doing so turns China from being the developed country's factory to their competitor. And historically, capitalist nations have always been the aggressors, not the victims. They won't tolerate others taking their market share. Thus, trade wars, tech wars, and financial wars began. China's shift to a dual circulation economy, prioritizing domestic consumption while still engaging globally, arose in this context. But before this, China had been following a Keynesian approach, expanding debt to stimulate the economy. Real estate was the best tool for this. For instance, if you borrow 2 million yuan from a bank to buy your neighbor's house, you now have 2 million in debt, the bank has 2 million in assets, and your neighbor has 2 million in cash. With cash in hand, your neighbor feels secure and spends money, creating demand. In this process, debt, assets, and money all expand. This approach was so effective that China grew dependent on it, and every time the economy faced trouble, China would stimulate the real estate sector, flooding the market with money. It seemed like China was fixing the problem of overproduction, but it was really just piling debt onto its citizens. However, the borrowing capacity and willingness of the working class are limited. Debt expansion cannot continue forever, and eventually, the strategy stops working as the space for debt expansion shrinks. Though this approach did solve some problems, it didn't resolve the fundamental issues of income distribution. In fact, worsening rent economies and capital monopolies meant that most of the profits earned by production companies went to rent or shareholder dividends, leaving only a small amount for worker wages. Thus, the gap between returns on capital and returns on labor widened, leading to greater income inequality. China now faces an economic situation where both exports and debt expansion have hit obstacles. Internationally, it can't sell goods at high prices, and domestically, investment is stagnating. Ray Dalio once said there would be a decade of financial and trade wars before a hot war. Clearly, China is in that phase now. But does China have an advantage? Yes, it does. It's manufacturing. Looking back at history, whoever controls the means of creating wealth can reshape the world order. When manufacturing moved to Britain, Britain accumulated technology, launched the Industrial Revolution, and replaced the Dutch commercial and financial order. Later, when manufacturing moved from Britain to the US replaced Britain as the world's leader. At the end of the day, labor creates wealth, and that is an unchanging truth. From this perspective, technology and production are the natural order. It is inevitable that financial empires will be challenged by manufacturing powers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next one.